Hi, I'm James Catherall, founder of Catherall Audio. In this video, I'm going to do a deep dive on the new stem splitter in Logic Pro 11. So, Logic Pro 11 finally dropped yesterday on May 13th after a long wait throughout the day. I was following a whole bunch of videos and seeing everyone really excited and really anticipating this new drop, and I think it definitely didn't disappoint, at least in my opinion. There's a lot of really great things in Logic Pro 11. And I'm going to do a bigger video that kind of talks about all the features, so make sure you get subscribed so you don't miss out on that. Right now in this video, we're going to focus entirely on the stem splitter. So the stem splitter in Logic Pro allows you to take an audio file of any fully mixed song that you have and split it into 4 separate stems. So it'll isolate just the vocals, the drums, the bass, and then the other, which is just kind of everything that doesn't fit in those 3 categories. So some of the big ones is probably things like guitars and pianos and strings and synths and anything like that. So hopefully in a future version or update, it'll be able to split out into more things. So maybe we can actually get the guitar and the piano and even the synth and maybe some other things. So I downloaded a couple songs off a website called loudly.com. One of them is just the fully mixed song, and then the other one I have a fully mixed song, plus it also provides the stems themselves. So I think this will be able to give us a really good, more like real world comparison to see how close these stem splitter features are to the actual separate stems themselves, sort of like the originals. I'm also going to be comparing it against a few other apps and websites that do stem splitting as well, because as I think we all know, this isn't a brand new feature. There's a lot of websites, there's a lot of apps and software that already provides this type of feature. So I'm going to be taking this audio track and comparing it with the stem splitter and all of these other apps and websites. Some of the ones I'm going to be using is RX10, Spectra Layers, RipX, Moises, and I'm not sure how to say this right. I think it's just Lal or Lal is the website. So we'll be comparing it against all of those, talking about all the different parts of it, and then I'm going to play through all of them so you can listen for yourself and be able to form your own thoughts and opinions of which one you think might be best. So before we get into the listening comparisons, I want to talk about some of the other details of this just to make sure it's truly a fair comparison of the full context of what this is. So Logic Pro now comes with the stem splitter for free. It comes stock with it and it's included. So if you already owned Logic Pro before this update, you now get the stem splitter completely free. And if you didn't already own Logic and you want to be able to use the stem splitter, all you have to do is pay the $200 and now you have access to that stem splitter. Now, if we compare that against some of these other ones, we look at RX10, which has the stem splitting. It also has a whole other suite of features that's sort of like an audio cleanup type of software. You can spend $299 for the standard version or $799 for their advanced version. And then if we look at Spectra Layers, which is sort of another suite of audio cleanup type of software, you can spend $80 for what they call the Elements, which is sort of like the basic version of it, or you can spend $300 for the Pro version of Spectra Layers. And then looking at RipX, which is really basically just an audio stem separation software, you can spend $99 for their standard version or $199 for the Pro version. And then looking at Moises, which I think I might need some added help if maybe you guys can go in the comments and maybe let me know a little bit more. But I downloaded this off of the App Store. I want to say that it was free, but I've had it for a little bit and used it, so I'm not sure if it did have a cost that maybe I just can't find and forgot about. But it seems like the Moises one is free on the App Store with maybe some in-app purchases. And then the last one, we're looking at lal.ai. It's a website with a little bit of a different pricing model. Instead of just paying a fee to have access to this software, you're kind of buying like packs of minutes that you can use for songs. So if you want to separate a song, you'll use up those amount of minutes based off of how long that audio file is. So the different pricing packages is $18 for 90 minutes, $25 for 300 minutes, and then $35 for 500 minutes. And then as you keep using it, then you'll have to buy more packs of minutes to be able to then separate more songs. So that's just something to keep in mind to really make sure this is a fair comparison between all of these. That this comes with Logic Pro. If we want to think about it as a cost, I guess we can say it's $200 to get access to the stem splitter, just so you can keep that in mind if you want to maybe go with one of these other softwares instead of using the stem splitter in Logic Pro. And then the last thing for us to keep in mind with this comparison, and I'll actually demonstrate it inside of the Logic project, is the amount of time it takes to do this stem splitting. All of these other apps, they basically took about the same amount of time, which is maybe just under a minute. Maybe a couple of them took a little over a minute to do this full stem splitting. Is you would drop the audio file in, and then you hit split, or you hit process, or whatever you want to think of it as, and then it would take maybe a little under a minute for it to be able to separate all of it out and then have those audio files ready for you. And then from there, you have to download them and then drop them into your Logic project. And then if we compare that against the stem splitter inside of Logic, it's almost basically instant. And you'll see it when I do it inside of the Logic project for you in this video, but that's a big benefit of it being able to be like custom coded for the M series processors inside of the computer. Is it literally takes like 1 to 2 seconds and it all happens inside of your project. So you hit split, and then it maintains that original audio file you put in, and then it also gives you 4 new audio files with the different stems. So with that, let's take a look inside of the Logic project. Here's song number 1. I'm not going to play the entire song from beginning to end. I'm just going to play little clips of it so you can listen to how it's splitting up all these things. But let's do the first thing. Let's kind of check out how long it takes to do this. I'm going to highlight right here. This is my original song. I'm going to 2-finger tap. And then I'm going to go down here to where it says processing, and then there's the stem splitter. I'm going to click on that. And then here's the 4 things it's going to separate it into: vocals, drums, bass, and then other. And you can uncheck these if you don't want to include those stems, if maybe you just want like the vocal stem only. So then I'll hit split. It's creating it and it's done. Happens that quickly, literally just like 1 to 2 seconds and it's done. So let's go back and let's take a look at just the original song itself. So here's the song. I'm going to do right here. Let's create this so we could just listen right here. This is right where the vocals start. I'm going to push play. So that's our original song. So now let's start off by looking at just the vocals of each of these so we can do these like quick direct comparisons. Here's the stem splitter vocals. In the dark, look if you right through my heart, a warming shadow, let it go. And I haven't said it yet, but I would highly suggest wearing headphones as we're doing all these comparisons so you can really hear all the little details that might not be able to come across if you're just listening on like your iPhone or through your laptop speakers. But if you hear that, obviously it's not completely perfect, it's not 100%, but it's actually really good. And I was really impressed by how well that stem splitter was able to separate out those vocals. You'll be able to see how it compares to all the other ones, but you can hear there's like little artifacts in there, especially in sort of like the upper frequencies. There's some scratches that I think is kind of coming from the drums and things like that, that it's still, some of that's leaking into this vocal stem. Let's jump over to the RX10. And I'm going to solo those vocals. In the dark, look if you right through my heart, a warming shadow, let it go. So you can kind of hear not so much of those like upper artifacts, but it did also capture a little bit more of that reverb compared to what the stem splitter did. Now let's take a look at spectra layers. In the dark, look if you right through my heart, a warming shadow, let it go. And then I'm going to kind of just get through these last ones. Here is the RIP X version. In the dark, look if you right through my heart, a warming shadow, let it go. The one that I've noticed with RIP X, and I've used RIP X for a little while now, is it kind of struggles with some of those lower frequencies. I feel like the bass guitar or bass frequencies always end up leaking into the vocals like that. So you could hear that there, that we got some of those low frequencies that leaked in every once in a while. And then to left, we got the Moises. In the dark, look if you right through my heart, a warming shadow, let it go. And then here's the lol lol, L-A-L-A-L.
In the dark, look if you're right through my heart, a warming shadow lurk.
So I'd say that one is actually one of the more impressive ones. That came off of it's a website. You go to it and you drop the audio in and then it separates it for you. But I think that one did a really good job of not having any leakage in there of any of those other elements of the drums or things like that. Let's go back and now we're going to listen to the drums. So let's start with the stem splitter. Stem splitter, and now we're going to go to RX10. I think already you can hear some major differences that RX10 drum stem sounds way boxier compared to the stem splitter. Go down to spectra layers. And then let's go to RipX. Take a look at the Moises. And then we'll jump down to the lol lol. So I think to me, I'm still actually the most impressed by the stem splitter in that one, if we listen to that again. I feel like that one did a good job of really capturing the drums and getting a better spectrum of the frequencies without focusing too much on maybe those mids, the upper mids, so it gets too boxy. And then let's do the bass guitar. So that was the stem splitter. Let's look at the RX10. Already pretty big difference between those two. Let's look at the spectra layers. And then now we're going to go down to RipX. Going to go down to the Moises. And then let's listen to the lol lol. So I think one of the interesting things when we listen to all those is also kind of hearing the strengths of each of these different applications and softwares, that some of them, maybe the vocals came across a little bit better with their algorithm, but maybe it's not as good at capturing the bass guitar. Like I think that one had the biggest difference between all of those was listening to what its algorithm did to try and capture that bass guitar frequency and create a stem out of it. And then after that, we have the other, which this is like the biggest range between all of these of what you'll get. The stem splitter obviously only offers the other right now, but each of these had a range of what it could do. The RipX and the spectra layers probably offers the biggest range of what you can get out of it and what it separates into. But for now, I'm just going to group all of them together as we listen to these others. So starting here with the stem splitter. So you can hear in this song, the other is mostly going to be some synth elements and a guitar. So now let's go to the RX10. I think the other thing that's interesting to listen in there is not only what it captured, but what was able to separate out. So we could hear in that one, it still had a little bit of those vocals in this other category for the RX10. Now for spectra layers, let's just group all of these together. And then we're going to go to RipX. And then we'll go to Moises. And then for the lol lol one, I actually wasn't able to capture the other stuff, just the way it separates it. I only did like the trial kind of version of lol lol and wasn't able to capture the other stuff. And then this was the song that also came with the original stems as well from loudly.com, is it provides the ability to download each individual stem. So this is now more of like the original stem. This isn't like a stem splitter. So you can just do a quick comparison between the stem splitter and the original stems of the song. We listen to the vocals.
In the dark, a look of you right through my heart.
And then we compare that to the stem splitter.
In the dark, a look of you right through my heart.
We can kind of almost view that as like a reality check of where the stem splitting software is currently today, and then compared to an actual original stem of the song. And if we do the same thing for the drums. And then we'll do the bass. And then now we'll do the other. So I think some of the interesting things in there, for sure, like when we listen to the other, some of the stuff that gets lost the quickest is really that like upper frequency of like the air kind of area of it, or what gives it that clarity of like the 10K and up frequencies, where a lot of these splits really sound a little bit more muffled and like a lot of mid frequencies. I think the other thing that was interesting when I listened to the drums was how much it lost like that stereo image of it. The drums of the stem splitter sounded way more just like mono and right here, whereas the original stem still had like the room mics that gave it a little bit more like, just kind of gave it a better stereo image. So now that we've looked at all of that, I'm going to hop over to the other song. So this was more of like an indie pop type of song is what it was called. And now this other one's going to be more of like a drum and bass type of song. So here's song number 2. This one doesn't have the original stems. All we're going to be able to listen to is the full mix from the website and then what we get from these stem splitters. So here's our original song.
We're trying hard to let loose all the things that bother us. Then we go out and let it go. Then we go out and let it flow.
So slightly different genre, just to see what these stem splitters are able to do with this. So first up, let's do the vocals with the stem splitter.
We're trying hard to let loose all the things that bother us. Then we go out and let it go. Then we go out and let it flow. As I see.
So the interesting thing in there, if we listen to all these vocals, is seeing how much the drum track leaks into these stems. That one's pretty subtle, but I think some of these other ones, we end up with a little bit more drums in this stem. So now let's listen to the RX10.
We're trying hard to let loose all the things that bother us. Then we go out and let it go. Then we go out and let it flow.
Like that one for sure, we definitely got more of the drum track in that vocal stem. I think the other thing that's interesting to listen for in this one is this vocal has a bit more reverb on it compared to the other one. So it's interesting to see how much these stem splitters maintain that reverb in the track. Next, let's listen to the vocals for the spectral layers.
We're trying hard to let loose all the things that bother us. Then we go out and let it go. Then we go out and let it flow.
And now we'll do Rip X.
We're trying hard to let loose all the things that bother us. Then we go out and let it go. Then we go out and let it flow.
So I think similar to the other song we listened to for Rip X is we notice that those lower frequencies leak into this vocal track, that this is sort of like an upper frequencies female voice, and we can hear that it's still struggling to really get rid of all of those low frequencies that we don't want in this stem. And let's go on to Moises.
We're trying hard to let loose all the things that bother us. Then we go.
And Lol Lol.
We're trying hard to let loose all the things that bother us. Then we go.
So I think the one that impresses me the most about Lol Lol is listening to those vocals and how well it's able to maintain that upper frequency, pristine clarity that's really nice in a song like this. Next, let's listen to the drums. I think something interesting to listen for in this one is how the drums in this track starts in just sort of like the upper mids and the mids, and then it kind of like drops into this beat drop where the low frequencies come in and gives you a little bit more punch to see how well it handles that when it's separating these stems out. Here's the RX10. See how much it got like really reverby in that one too, that it wasn't able to really capture the punch and the transients of the drums maybe as much as we might have wanted. Here's spectra layers. And now let's do rip X. And let's do Moises. And then let's do Lol Lol. Now let's go to the bass guitar. I feel like this one for me is the one where I hear the most differences between all of these different softwares and their algorithms as far as what they try and capture. When I'm listening to the stem splitter, it feels like it really focuses on capturing the mids and the upper mids and not so much on like the really low frequencies of the bass, where some of the other ones kind of remove more of the upper mids but still maintain a lot more of that bass. And some of these, because the bass guitar can get sort of close to vocals sometimes, that some of these you really get a lot of that vocal track bleeding into this bass stem. Let's start with the stem splitter. And then let's do RX10. And now let's listen to the spectra layers. And the rip X. So you can really hear in that one, it might have been more of just the reverb of the vocals that bleeds into this bass stem. And then Moises. So I think that's another one you can kind of hear it bleeding in like that. And then let's listen to Lol Lol. So just an interesting one to go back and listen to each one of those separately and see the differences of what it's trying to capture in that bass stem and what the algorithm is really focusing on. And then let's finish off with listening to this other track. And this song is mostly just piano, but we can still see what kind of stuff it's capturing. So that was the stem splitter. Now let's do RX10. You hear that? It felt like that one had a lot of the bass guitar bleeding into that track. Now let's do the spectra layers. And rip X. And then Moises. All right, so that finishes off the listening for each of those different songs. So hopefully that's helpful so you can go back and really form your own opinions and see what you like the best out of each of these different softwares with your own ears and using your headphones and really diving in and getting picky with each of these. So I think another thing to keep in mind with all of these is the price stuff that we had talked about, but also another one that I think is really important to keep in mind with this context is for Logic Pro, this is really just version number 1 for this stem splitter. Whereas for a lot of these other softwares, they've existed longer and have been able to make updates and improvements to their algorithms and to their software. So I think it'll be really exciting to watch the development of this stem splitter over time and how they're able to improve it and maybe add more stem splitting so it's not just one big other category, but you can get things like guitar and piano and synth and strings also separated into their own stems. So I hope this video is helpful. If you made it this far, I'd really appreciate it if you leave a like. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.